we were just talking about, um, well, you just sent me a couple of pictures from your time in Miami this past weekend.
Mhm.
So, what exactly was that event you were at? Because the pictures you have from it, like, people call photography an art, and I do and don't agree with that. But like, you're one of the photographers. Your work is like, I definitely like. Okay, he's an artist. And you really displayed that, and like especially a picture you just sent me, which we'll bring up later. We can bring it up now. I'm
Mhm.
just like, wow, dude, that's cool. So
Yeah,
talk
that
about that
initial
event.
image I sent you, and we're Facebook friends. You see all the other stuff that I post up, and there's a lot of things that I don't post up. But that initial image that I sent was from Homestead Miami Speedway, which I had been there before, but had never been taking photos. My first experience there was my first time shooting commercially as a drone pilot. And I actually was filming, live streaming with a little Mavic 2 Pro drone with some NASA racing, not space shuttle, but National Autosport Association. So I was down there with a friend who was doing dry runs and test runs of doing live streams for grassroots racing, and he wanted to integrate drone footage. So I was able to get in the track with aerial views, but I'd never really learned it in a photography sense. But at least I knew, how to get there, how long of a drive it was to get all the way down there. Um, and the weather was always iffy. It was, broad daylight or completely cloudy. It never really wanted to work out for me. And I wasn't thinking in terms of photography again. I was looking straight down overhead. Skip forward a couple years, and uh, I'm friends with Brian Redmond, James Redmond more so, who used to run Historic Sports Car Racing, HSR. Met him when I went to school in Savannah, Georgia, and there's this event that is called Brian Redmond's Targa 66. And if I remember right, this event has been going on for over 30 years at Palm Beach International Raceway. Buddy of mine, Taylor, and I went down to Palm Beach last year, and that was the last year that Palm Beach was running events there, which unfortunately I think has been flattened and turned into an Amazon warehouse. And it's kind of a bummer. That place had history,
Mm.
it had a drag strip. We went there, all the grandstands were literally plasma cut in half. There were no stairs, there were no bathrooms. It was just like, here's the track, here's the last little bit before we scrap the whole place.
That sucks.
So after that year, it was, where is it going to be next? I didn't want to bother James, because we have little conversations here and there of like, hey, what are your ideas? What are some candidates for the next home of Targa 66? And Targa's not really well known to the public. It's not like the MIDI, which is, run through HSR at Road Atlanta. This event is very much basically a private club type event. There are no times, there are no competitions, no trophies, no nothing. This is literally bring whatever car you want and enjoy your time at the track. And this specific event can bring out some very special cars. One being in that photo was the 1978 James Hunt McLaren M26-4, which that one actually had the dual front wing setup when they tested it at the Spanish Grand Prix in 1978. They banned it after practice. They're like, you can't use that. So it's a very unique car, and it was actually shipped over from Germany. I forget which city in Germany, but it was brought over by Brytech Motorsports. Two Germans followed that car, and they were brought in by a private individual because he's like, I want to drive this car. He paid for them to come over here with all the equipment, everything they needed. The car went through a full engine build. But to me, I find it special. It's not just there's Indy lights, still it's like a Formula style car, and those are cool. There's nothing wrong with taking pictures of those, but this one was like, this is the car. this is a Formula One car. This has race history. It has that name to it, has that, and it was in pristine condition. Even if it had the old rubber, on the front, that would have been cool. But this was like they just made it. All the rubber was brand new. The paint was new. I think they spent 4 days rebuilding the motor, and they had just rebuilt most of it in Germany and then finished it here in the States. And so for me, I've never been around F1 cars before, so just to be in the presence of that car was extremely special to me because it's got that heritage. If you've watched the movie Rush, it's just like, oh my gosh. That specific car wasn't in the movie since that was 78. The movie was, I think, in 1976. So it's a slightly later car. But it was evening. They just finished up on Saturday. It's, everyone's thinking about dinner. Things are closing down. My buddy and I are like, ooh, golden light. Let's get some shots in after the track action. Finished up at 4:30. So no cars on track with golden light the whole weekend. We were kind of bummed because it's not like Sebring where you at least got golden light at least one time, or Daytona, which I had went to prior to the 24, which you have two chances. Well, this year was one. So I was missing out on the golden light opportunities, which in racing terms, especially with like the IMSA series, doesn't happen often throughout the year. And that's important for a photographer to have good light. Midday light drives us nuts, and especially when it's noon to 1 o'clock, we just almost want
Ah,
to
sucks.
just want to give up. We're like, oh, the highlights, and okay, we'll do some
Yeah.
conceptual stuff, or stop down three stops on our camera to try to make something interesting out of the highlights. But um, when we were finishing up, literally like, all right, dude, well, let's go to Walmart and cook some steaks on the grill at our rented camper. Golden light hits, and I see a what was it? I don't know what brand, but it was a red Budweiser GTP car being pushed out of the garages. They literally just pushed it and parked it right in the midway between the trailers and the garages. We're like, oh wow, okay, start taking pictures. Then out comes an identically colored Budweiser Indy car right next to it. We're like, oh my gosh, both of them together. Yes, awesome. And get angles. I ran on top of the garages. My buddy Taylor would get from another angle, and we're just shooting away. And all the drivers and support crew literally just backed away into a crowd behind us, and they're like, we're just gonna let them do it. And you could hear them talk about us, making jokes on, oh, he's probably has to lay on the ground. Oh yeah, get low. And so we were doing what they were telling us to do, messing with them, and they were turning out great shots. I mean, we had like less than probably 35 minutes to full sunset, or at least as the sun went behind the grandstands. And as we're doing that, here comes the James Hunt car. I'm like, oh my gosh. They look at me because I'm standing on the garages, and they're like, where do you want it?
Oh, no
Right,
way.
right there. Don't move it. So they straighten the wheel out and they do one, two, and three, facing the sun, long shadows. I mean, I had to tell guys, I need you to either get behind your truck or in the garages because you're 80 feet away and you're casting a shadow on the car.
Wow.
And they're like, okay, park the cars. We shot some more. I come back down, get a couple more close up shots. And one of the guys, Mark, comes to me. He's full German. He's like, do you want car on track? I'm like, excuse me? He's like, do you want the car on track? I don't know if security's gonna allow it. He's like, gate is open. We're going. Oh, 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 okay. Well, we got 10 minutes, so they probably kick us out if they are watching. He's like, that's fine. What are they gonna do? Kick us out? No one's there. There was like one guy at the gate booth in the track. Other than that, honestly, I wish I should have done a track walk because no one was there. So we start
Wow.
backing it onto the pits. And I'm like, oh man, painted lines, the burnout marks, texture on the ground. I'm thinking, okay, leading lines of the concrete walls. And I'm like, that's great. Park it right there. And he's like, no, banking.
He
Okay.
gets it.
He's like, you and you and you, help me. They push it up onto the banking, lock it in gear, and they're just like, have fun. So I had
Wow.
15 minutes with Taylor and I to just go nuts with it. And we had a thunderstorm rolling, and I'm watching the clouds swirling, typical afternoon, evening Florida rain coming in. But it was like ultra long shadows. Go looking from the front to the back on the car was cool with the oval in the back, but having the sun rays come through it, the grandstands, the fencing, the glare coming off the beautiful paint. It was just like, this. I took the Walter Mitty ghost cat moment, and that's what I do at every single track. Every single event I go to, I literally just put the camera down and just watch, just for like, even if it's 30 seconds. Like, I'm shooting a James Hunt car, a Formula One car, a V10. It's just like there's a reason why I don't go to parking lot car shows anymore, because I'd rather spend time and effort to take advantage of situations like this. I told my friend, I I do not want you to have expectations. When we come to this event, anything can happen. We never asked him to take this photo shoot. We never asked for any resources. I never really asked for any money other than, hey, if you want a couple shots, can we help cover our travel costs? Um, it was just like, holy crap. When we finished up the shoot, pushed the car into the garage, thunderstorm within seconds.
That's such an awesome story. And I,
So,
I, yeah, dude, that's awesome. I love how you put the camera down for a second too and take in the moment, because that's something like I started to do, because I'm realizing like, dude, little me would be so proud. Like the first time I shot a NASCAR race, I was so like caught up in it for the whole weekend, and then I like kind of just put my camera down during a caution. And bro, I cried for like 30 seconds. I'm like,
yep.
because we spend our whole time looking through a viewfinder that, we never really have time to just kind of slow down and be like,
And I
this is
think that
happening.
comes with, I would, in some ways, maturity of becoming an artist, becoming a photographer. But, you know, as we get experience, you become, there's varying levels of mastery. There's not just, you know, amateur, pro AM, and then pro. There's varying levels. There's different experiences and stuff. But as I'm doing this more and more and experiencing different types of photo shoots, it's um realizing of like, what has it taken for me to reach this point, and then just sitting back of like, oh my gosh, look at what I'm doing. When I went to Chicago with and then when I was at Audubon Country Club and did a photo shoot, a full light painting, 4 hours of my own time in a garage with a Pagani Zonda R, and they're like, get in the car, you're steering this thing, we're going to put it where you want, and then we're going to leave you alone for a couple hours.
Oh my goodness.
I couldn't ever imagine seeing one in the United States, let alone, here, it's all yours. I didn't get to drive it, didn't get to start it, but it's it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm here. A little tear went down, or doing a light painting of an Audi RS3 at Sebring last year, working with a race team. They're like, I just asked them, hey, can I do a light painting of the car? They're like, yeah, it's behind the cover next to the trailer. Pull the cover off, have fun.
That's so wild, man.
It's yeah, it's again those ghost cat moments of just sit back and be like, I got the best ticket in the house. You know, it's not just
It's
because you're taking pictures, but it's the experiences you get while doing them.
Yeah, because I mean, deep down, like we're all race fans, and a lot of us, like, not me per se, but obviously you're a car guy, and it's just like nobody is a motorsports photographer because they're trying to get rich. Like we all know that it's not a job,
Nope.
it's not something you're doing to get rich, but it's just like the experiences that come from what we do is just, I mean, and I've only had like access to stuff like big events like IMSA and NASCAR for a year because that's just
Hmm.
where I'm at in my progression, where I'm
Hmm.
where I'm working towards, and it's just like I've experienced some really cool
And
things,
it's
and
only
it's
just the
important to
beginning.
slow down.
And that's what I always say is this is only the beginning.
It's
If you
yeah.
keep pushing, you keep passionate, you're always searching for that next opportunity. You're always networking. It's funny how things just kind of lead and people you meet, um, a lot of people when they're trying to get into the photography side of things, they ask, well, how do you become a, pro photographer at shoot IMSA? There's no formula. It's how do you kind of forge your own path? It's, for me, I'm extremely introvert. I hate large groups of people. I'm kind of very shy meeting people, but through friends and contacts, it's crazy starting, kind of a little bit of how I got started was all the way back. I've been taking pictures even with 35 millimeter film from way back, when I was a kid, probably even like I think 5 years old. My grandmother gave me her point and shoot, like Polaroid, you know, film camera. Then my dad had a Pentax SLR film camera that I kept stealing, and then eventually he's just like, "Here, have the camera. You're going to take more pictures than I am." During family vacations, and then when I went into school, Savannah College of Art and Design, that's when the racing stuff came in. I really liked cars. My mother was actually the speed demon of the family, but we always had a Corvette in the family due to dad because he likes his classics. So got the start in the parking lot car shows, the cruise ins, um, learned my way, got a little Olympus waterproof point and shoot camera, and then it just took off from there. I started going to Mid Ohio Raceway, um, back in 2002, saw the Formula One races, the V8 era, at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That's what really touched me, you know. And it was just mom and I, and we're sitting at turn one, freezing our butts off, getting sleeted and rained on, while Michael Schumacher and all those big names are coming by. And I think Fernando Alonso's car actually had a mechanical failure during the race. Um, Watching him walk off. And that was the last time I saw F1 in person. But then I was hooked with the racetrack stuff. Um, and then what really, really, really like, okay, I really want to start taking pictures of race cars was actually my first time on a racetrack. And that was at Silverstone Raceway, because I have family members in England. Um, my aunt, Elizabeth, she was trying to start up a track day company, with Radical Sports Cars. So, are you familiar with them at all?
I know from iRacing, and I know the Radical
Okay.
Cup is a thing.
So you got the there's like the SR3, the SR8, there's the SR10. Well, back in 2000, I think it was 2007. I always get the years mixed up. She was working with Radical on try before you buy program. You go to Silverstone, you check out the cars, you drive it, and find out which one you want to buy. And I got to hang out there at Silverstone. Just a little guy sitting there in the paddock, carbon fiber tables, coffee machines, and just it was an open track day at the F1 circuit. This guy comes up to me and says, "What are you doing here?" So I'm just hanging out with my aunt, don't, just having fun watching the cars. And I had my little Nikon D90 with me, um, you know, APS-C crop sensor. And I rented a 24-70 2.8. Like that was a pro lens. Got some great London shots with that lens too. Um, Mustang going by, shooting through pit lane fence. And he's like, "What, do you want to go for a ride?" I'm like,
Stranger
that
danger.
that wasn't in the plan. Don't really know you. I don't have a card again. He looks over my hand and says, "Mind if we take him?" She's like, "Have fun." So he's like, we're gonna go in that car." And he points and we walk over and he's like, "Got a helmet?" No. Grabs a helmet off this guy's table and he's like, "Here." Throws it on me and he sits me inside of a Radical SR8 LM, which is basically two Hayabusa motors put together in a V8 configuration. 10,000 RPM, air sequential shift, 5-point harness. Turns out the driver is the British national champion from the past year.
Wow.
So now I'm going 165 miles an hour, doing 7 or 8 hot laps around Silverstone Circuit in a
So,
Radical.
so your aunt being your guardian, does that make her like the worst guardian ever or like the best?
She is as much of a speed demon as my mother is. They're sisters. Um, their father ran Top Fuel funny cars in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
So he was in the Navy, had history out in Indianapolis. That's where, my mother got her dual citizenship and everything because he was moving all over the place. Um, she got the liking for cars. She learned how to drive in a Cosworth Vega V8 stick shift. So it was a requirement being in this family. I had to learn stick shift as well. But after having that experience, that circuit, my aunt, who's also well into cars, she has an Aston Martin right now. So if I go back to England, immediate photo shoot,
Oh,
you know.
100%. I got a buddy that's building a Camaro, and he's like, the first thing he's like, as soon as this thing's running, dude, I'm hiring you. We're gonna take some pictures. I'm like, all right. And he's like, can you light paint? I'm like, we're gonna learn. We're gonna figure it out.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the other thing that it takes time to develop. Light painting is one of those things I love doing, and I may have been doing it. I did my first light painting, did my first one with my parents' C6 convertible Corvette, and that was way back in like 2010. So it's been a while since I started doing them. I did some when I worked for ECS Tuning as a commercial photographer, having a studio where I can turn all the lights off. And I was doing light paintings multiple times on a weekly basis for 3 years. So really got to hone it in, but it always seemed sterile. That place had no character. There was no heritage. There were no posters on the wall. There wasn't, like your room in the background where it's got memorabilia, it's got flags, it's got lights. It doesn't look like a shop. It just looks like a CDC laboratory.
ugh, it's boring.
It's boring. You can't be creative with something that has no character. I tried everything I could, and after 3 years, COVID hit, and then I left them, and that's where I'm like, you know what? Now's the time. Things happen for a reason. Maybe it was a good time I left them. Things weren't really going smoothly with me because I wanted to grow, not just as a photographer, but it's just like I feel like I could do more overall. I want to travel. I want to do some cool stuff. And being stuck in a laboratory is not going to do it. So when COVID hit, most people, things were shut down, nothing happening. It was very negative for a lot of people. That's when I'm like, okay, let things shut down for 2 months. Let's figure everything out. Didn't have a job, had to deal with unemployment. Um, but then that's when, you know what? Let's get into track photography. I was already established in 2018 with the National Autosport Association, the Great Lakes region specifically for me and kind of the Ohio area. Um, and they brought me in as their official guy. So since 2018, at least once a month during the warmer months, not during snow, I'm at a track almost 1 to 2 times a month for since 2018. And through those experiences, every single event, learning new things, trying different approaches, finding out, ooh, that didn't work. Okay, let's not do that the next event. That's how you learn, trial and error, pushing hard for the next thing, trying to make a business out of it, and trying to upgrade my equipment. And it was never like I had to have the latest and greatest thing unless it was worth getting it for a specific purpose. There's some photographers that I know for a fact I have to buy the latest and greatest thing because it'll make me an amazing photographer. That's far from the truth.
Absolutely.
you know, Looking back at some of the images I took back in 2010 when Moto America, no, I take that back. The AMA Pro Road Racing Series, road racing at Mid Ohio. There are shots I took with a D90 and a kit lens. I'm still blown away today on how clear and amazing those shots are. I was doing panning shots before I knew I did a panning shot.
Yeah, like going to that. I mean, I got my first NASCAR credentials on a Canon SL1, which isn't like
Wow.
entry level with a kit 70 to 300 lens. Like,
Yep.
and
Yep. That's exactly what I had.
yeah, it's you had the Nikon equivalent, and just getting that practice and experience is so much more important than gear. Like so much more important.
It's about time. There are some that pick it up faster than others. Yes, equipment can certainly help. But that's where starting down at the bottom level helps you gain an appreciation on starting that low, learning the struggle, the trial and error, you know, figuring out, why are my shots really noisy? What is noise? What is this? YouTube helped me out in some ways, but just I cannot count how many photos I've taken since, pretty much the start of like the professional side of things. Because, professional is when you start making money. Well, starting college, about every weekend I was at Roebling Road Raceway because I only lived 25 minutes away from it, which is where Auto Week does their testing. So I would hear some cool behind the scenes stuff, and got really tight with the automotive community there. But I got hooked in with the motorcycle guys. So if there were track days at Roebling, I would be there, regardless if it was what was it, CCS, we're testing for Moto America, general track day stuff, historic stuff. I mean, my D500 that I got when I started college, which unfortunately is no longer operational because it's in pieces, um, I think had over 1.2 million photos on it.
Oh my goodness.
So that's how many photos it took up until it came out. And yeah, the D90 was for a good bit, and then 2016 D500 came out. So 16 through last summer, over,
Wow.
1.2, 1.3 million shots.
That's like the highest shutter count I think I've ever heard of.
Yep. And I
That's
kept
insane.
counting it. The D90 is still operational. My dad has it. I don't know how much he uses it, but I almost want to, you know, pull the file off, check it, and see what exposure numbers I had there. So it's not just because sheer numbers, oh, spray and pray, shoot as much as possible, which we all do at the beginning just because we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, like it's almost like a bragging thing. When I first started out, like I go to the track with friends, like, oh, well, you took 5,000 shots today. I took 8,000 shots today, and I'm gonna use like 30 of them if that.
Yep. And then you're like, oh my gosh, dude, I'm a week into this and I'm still editing photos. And they're like,
Yeah.
we're already done.
No, that's
It's a
something that
phase. It's a phase with
it's
all
a
of us.
phase.
And
It's
it's almost very specific with either wildlife photographers or motorsport, at least to my knowledge. Portrait photographers, they absolutely laugh at me if I shoot anything above 500 shots for an event. Um, I guess sport and action photography is definitely a high volume type thing. But as time goes on, I've learned, okay, there are moments for spray and pray. You may have the fastest equipment in the world, but there are human limitations on how quickly you can react to something.
No, definitely.
um,
Like start shots and crashes are good times for spray and pray.
and
Except not start shots over, but like you
I
know what I'm
have a
saying.
bad habit about missing the crashes. I'm more the guy of like, where's the crash? And the camera's not up. Like I've gotten a couple, crashes, but it's like even at Homestead, I had a Ferrari 488 turbo just go full bore spinning in front of me, and I'm just there gawking, camera down, like, oh my gosh, I hope he's okay. Not taking pictures of it. Yeah, it's I have a habit of knowing where all the action is, especially with the NASA racing. I've been really doing it for the region. This will be my fourth year. But I have a habit of knowing where, okay, this is where the passing's going to be. This is where, okay, turn one mid Ohio, I'm just going to be ready. Or coming around turn number 5 at the top of the hill because I know they're going to get grouped up. Someone's going to lock up the brakes and all hell is going to break loose. And they always come back to me of like, so did you get it? Like, yep, I knew exactly where they're like, you always happen to be where the crashes are. I'm like, because that's where the action is. Some guys don't want that stuff posted up, but it seems like the guys that I think don't want it, they come straight to me, be like, I want that shot. And they have it as like a badge of honor when I send them the photo. It's like,
I have a
nope.
lot of that in the motorcycle series I do photography work for. They race it's a Northeast Motorcycle Road Race. I'm their social media guy, and I do a
Mm,
lot of photography work. And it's all like grassroots level stuff. There's a couple like mixing, bigger guys, and
mm.
it's like one big family, and crashes are kind of like bad juju. Like you don't talk about it, but like anytime somebody does crash, because like I know them, they're most of the time, most of them are like friends of mine. Every time it's like, hey, was that you over by the barrier? I'll get like a message on Facebook like an hour later. I'm like, yep, and they're like, did you get that? I'm like, well, drag and drop. Don't post it. It's against the rule book to post it, but here you go.
Yeah,
Like even
exactly. You're like, it doesn't look that great. Now, if they're just coming off track and there's plume of dust in the air, but there's no like damage or like wheels flying, it's just like, okay, I'll post it.
yeah, so like it culminated. One guy, he went off in front of me, and I'm sitting on the wall, gravel trap. This is turn 6 at Loudon,
Hmm.
gravel trap wall. He comes up, he lands like 3 feet from me, like he kind of slowly slides. He's low speed crash. He pops up, looks at me, he's like, "Yo, dude, you get that?" I'm like, "No, I
I've
didn't."
done that a couple times. They'll crash right in front of me, and I'm there with the camera. I got my shot of them hitting like the barrel, water barrels, and the water goes up in the air, and they sit there. I'm like, within, I can see their eyes. Hey, are you good? They give me thumbs up. And then as the safety guys are pulling him out of the car, they're like, dude, did you get that? And especially the Miata guys, if they're the kids, the parents are like, we got to see this because they learn from it. They're like, why did I crash? And they look at your
Yeah,
photos and be like, oh, that guy tapped me in the rear. I'm like, okay, now we know. So it's cool with the photos. They use them as a technical learning tool as well as like, okay, why did I crash? Is the car okay? Cool, dirt in the air. It looks, rad. Um, but then they're like, okay, so ooh, that's a lot of body roll. Oh, tire pressure looks low in the rear. Okay, so that's my line in turn number 5. And you just sit there with, showing off your phone to the back of the camera. They're like, zoom in on that wheel there. And
and
you
and
show
I
them.
and I would argue that's even more so in the motorcycle community, because like especially at a grassroots level where like all these I mean there's some professionals that race there, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of people that are just like weekend warriors. A lot of them be like, hey dude, like I had this one guy come up, good friend of mine, his name's Joe, and he's like, hey dude, I think I got my elbow down in turn 1. Are you gonna be there in morning warm up? I'm like, yeah, actually I was. Like, dude, if you can get my elbow down, like that would be the coolest thing ever. I'm like, right, we got his elbow
I'm,
down. He was
I'm gonna do
ecstatic.
a big series of wheelies for you going down between 1 and 2. Make
That's
sure
it.
you're
That's
there.
it.
Be like, all right, I'll be there. And those are the guys that buy the photos because they're like, I got to show my friends doing wheelies.
100%. And that's the stuff you can only get at grassroots level racing. is like you won't get that in like you won't get that in IMSA or SRO. Like you'll only
We don't
get
even
that
get
at the
burnouts in IMSA, which I'm kind of bummed. Which is why I want to go to a NASCAR race so I could see someone do a burnout for once.
Are you shooting any this year?
I'm. It's tough because due to the um financial aspect working with TPF, having to pay out of pocket and everything, it's very limiting on where I can go. I'm hoping to go to North Wilkesboro for at least like the I think it's the All Stars or something like that, the kind of like old school look. I was told if I go to any race, it should be at least that one. And I'll try to go to the Michigan Speedway one as well because I'm near Cleveland, so it's actually not that far of a drive up to that bigger circuit. Just because I missed out on the Daytona 500, which was funny. Coming back from Targa, literally drove by Daytona Speedway as soon as the fireworks went up at the finishing of the race. I'm like, with all the different overtimes and everything they had, passed by and I got video of it, the fireworks coming up. I'm like,
There
well,
you
we can
go.
say we were at the Daytona 500 driving by.
You're like sort of there. So
Yeah.
so you've never shot a NASCAR race though?
Nope. Never been to one, never seen one.
Wow.
It's one of those. I was never a big NASCAR fan when I was younger. Of course I was a major fan of Tom Cruise and Days of Thunder, but um I always just got into the road racing, being a Corvette family. My mother had a Lexus, so I had to like the Lexus. Just NASCAR never vibed with me. It was kind of the redneck sport that I never really cared about.
That's understandable. But so obviously you like road racing more. I believe you shot a whole season with IMSA,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right?
Shot part of the during COVID, helped out with an agency doing a couple different races there. Actually worked for a team for a short bit with I think three or four races, the Unitronic RS3 TCR team through a contact from ECS Tuning through my past job. Uh, did some work through them, which kind of get my foot in the door, and then hooked me in with an agency. Shot for them throughout most of the season, and just due to scheduling and stuff, I missed out on the last two races, but pretty much did the whole entire calendar. And then also mixed in, I would say, about half of the SRO or GT America series as well, because there's a lot of teams that kind of double pollinate between the two. Um, or we were starting off shooting teams that started in SRO, got their logistics together, and then worked their way into IMSA, just like Ashton Harrison with the Acura NSX car. So
Yes.
it was cool to go from starting off with grassroots, really, kind of basic, still doing decent stuff, then kind of going where I had the opportunity to shoot three of the NASA national championships. I'm now doing number four at Pittsburgh Raceway this year. They've already chosen me.
That's
And
a cool
then
track.
it's cool. It's not a spectator sport. It's a tough place to shoot. Very tough.
Oh,
Um, and then going from that, then going kind of as a spectator with IMSA, and then that's what they always say: go as a spectator, learn the tracks, learn the cars. You can get a lot of really good shots as a spectator. In fact, a lot of my shots are from spectator areas. Jamie Price will tell you the exact same thing, and I learned from him that aspect. But which is why I like follow like 2,500 people on Instagram. Is where are these spots? You see an image, pull them apart, how they do it, dissect them. And that's how helped me build my kind of portfolio when I went throughout IMSA was okay, what shots were being taken from VIR last year, minus the beautiful oak tree, which I had never have been able to see, but how did, I wasn't there to copy. I didn't want to do the exact shot that Jamie Price did from turn number two with his exact settings. It was like, okay, versus trying to learn this track completely on my own. Where have people been before to get good shots, and then kind of work from there, whether it's building a style or, okay, this turns, not good for most of the day until, if you're shooting in the afternoon, then the light coming through the trees is exactly the shot you want to get. But working throughout IMSA, and my my mother always says, each race I went to, I got better. It's all about constant improvement, learning where my mistakes were from, little tweaks in editing, little tweaks in how I approach my exposure on the camera, how to get smoother pans, how to work composition. And each race I did from all these crazy locations, it just got better and better, to the point of I almost don't think about it anymore. Like you had mentioned at the very beginning, it became more about the artistry and focusing on the experience and telling the story within the images versus, oh shoot, what settings do I need to use, what white balance, okay, I got to take 5 different shots with different white balances to figure out which one works. um how do I do a panning shot, how do I slow action down, what autofocus mode do I need to use in my camera to be able to do da 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 da. So it's crazy the progression I had from grassroots, a year in IMSA, and then now this year I'm fully independent again. Just kind of moving on, trying to go in my own direction versus, smashing out the volume photography, which having 15 to 25 clients during an IMSA weekend was, in my opinion, too much.
No, definitely. And like I was gonna ask about that because yeah, you progressed a lot in such a short time because with those agencies, you're shooting a lot and then you're spending a lot, time. That's like a lot of people realize it's just like, well, don't all the teams just have their own photographers? Yeah, and then there's the agencies that you guys pull a lot of workload.
We in the agency I was with, we were always the last guys in the media centers, or if we had our own little office, we would on average be editing all the way till, and this is every single night during race weekend, till midnight to 1 o'clock. Now, we always made it a point, let's be efficient throughout the day, especially if we're not covering every single group on track, to edit during our breaks or clearing cards or pre-selecting throughout the day the shots we're sending to our clients after each evening. That way, let's make it a point to literally finish at 7, 8 o'clock at night so we can actually have a real dinner and not, great, what pizza or weird gas station food is, or, available at 11 o'clock at night. Um, but it was the fire hose effect. You had to be good from the start. You had to have the same level of quality from, from the little guy in the TCR class all the way up to, and I was part of the team that shot officially for Lexus Racing USA, some Audi teams and Porsche and all kinds of stuff. Um, but at the same time, that crazy amount of volume, I was shooting at least a minimum. Let's say my first Daytona 24-hour event last year, I did the Roar and the Rolex 24. I shot over 75,000 images,
Oh my goodness.
a
That is so
lot,
many.
because the amount of clients, you had to be repetitious. Okay, there comes, within each group. So there was the what was it, GTD Pro, and then we didn't do any of the prototypes. It was only the GTD and GTD Pro when it was WeatherTech. Um, but it was just like, okay, well, there's 2 guys there, then there's 5 guys there. Well, I need to replicate these panning shots every single car, change the settings every single car. So that's where the volume comes from. I made it a point to be consistent. Every single client got the same shot and angle. So I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel with every single car, being more efficient.
No, that's so much easier said than done too. And just like that whole thing, like, you're talking about like, eating gas station pizza and stuff. Like that's another thing. If you're
How
looking
many
for a
how many
glamour,
times I hate chicken strips.
oh my gosh.
I
I've
love them, but I hate them. Every single track I went to, what's the food available? The 30-cent beef patty that's very questionable,
yeah,
or let's just say it's hard to screw up chicken tenders, but
I've had some pretty screwed up chicken tenders. But
yeah.
you have you ever had the ice cream in the Watkins Glen Media Center?
I had their burnt tip barbecue.
I didn't have that, but dude, next time you're walking this Glen, try the ice cream machine. It's the best ice cream you'll ever have in your life.
No, no, no. I'm thinking of the wrong place. Burnt barbecue was at Road America. Road America has fantastic barbecue. Oh my gosh.
I've
White
never
little
been.
shack. It's like a wraparound porch, huge menu, burgers. But the barbecue is killer, and their breakfast is amazing. Like I would have to say, Road America probably has the best food. Where else? I had They also have a killer mac and cheese spot on the other side by the VIP Tower booth. What did I have at Watkins?
Watkins Glen's regular food to me is like mid at best, but the ice cream machine, dude. Next time you're out
You
there,
know what? I don't think I ever had their food because that's when I always would take the camper. I would always try to
there
cook
you go.
myself. Or being Watkins, I'm going downtown for some very expensive barbecue.
Oh,
Um,
at Nichols, yeah.
yes, yeah, always
Nichols
going to
is good.
town. It's like far better food, and the places were open until 9-10 p.m. I did some historic stuff last year at Watkins as well. So it was cool to shoot the IMSA race and then literally the weekend after come back and shoot the Masters Historic Series. Um,
No.
Now you got me on the subject of food. Worst place was VIR because it was the questionable burger with chicken tenders that were like, what is this? I had a pineapple like Mexican bowl, literally half pineapple sliced in half, rice, beans, meat, all kinds of cool sauces.
Unusual combo.
At Indianapolis, yeah, it was very odd. But I would say tied for second place was at NOLA for SRO.
Really?
We had a
Yeah, New Orleans is good. Good food. That
This
makes
was
sense.
different. It was Brazilian. We actually had a guy with a mobile fire pit and stuff had their like rolled up marinated steak with sausage and all kinds of stuff. The guy was smoking this from 8 a.m. in the morning. We showed up at the track, served it at lunch, and then even had leftovers when we finished up at the track for dinner. Absolutely amazing. The whole
That's awesome.
track would literally vacate the whole pit area and eat from just this one person. It was the best thing ever.
That's awesome. In terms of media center food for me, most of it's pretty gnarly, but out of all places, Pocono,
Really?
they have an organics company that's like local. I believe it's like that's what it was, catered to it. And it was like unreal. Like overall, everything was really like top. Like if I got this in like a good restaurant, I'd be like, all right, this is what you expect. But the best thing I ever had in my life from media center food was at Dover. And
Huh.
it was the rest of the food was like, okay, but they had these fruity pebble Rice Krispie treats that had like yogurt on the bottom. I swear it was the greatest single bite of food I've ever had in my life. Like the greatest. It was like a life-changing experience. This fruity pebble Rice Krispie treat. I really hope when I go back there in 2 months that they have those there again because I will be ecstatic. Like that'll be the whole highlight for the weekend. Like I don't care what happens, dude. They just got them fruity pebble Rice Krispie treats.
Hmm.
But so
Yeah.
you going back to like the lawn days and stuff. Well, how we get off our divergence of food.
Okay.
What does a shot list look like when you have that many clients, and how do you like keep in like your memory bank? Like I gotta shoot Lexus here, and I got the Audi here. Like,
Hmm.
how do you keep that in your mind? Like, which, like, not forget? Because you can't, you
For
don't really have
for
the
the
option to
agency
forget.
stuff, we typically had a team lead, and he would literally go through who worked with Lexus PR. The people that wanted those specific shots was honestly mainly just Lexus because of their marketing department, because they're trying to do advertising. They actually utilize social media really well for the most part. There are always times I'm like, why did they choose that photo? But that's up to each person's interpretation. Um, it generally they're like, okay, Jeremy, you're gonna go here for when they do the sim racing and then the awards. You guys are going to go to Lexus Hospitality where they're going to be doing a Q&A session with all the drivers there in front of VIPs, this, that, and this. But it just tells you, okay, be here at be this time. Then it's up to your kind of interpretation of what's going on, whether it's the light, whether, who's there, how many people on. Okay, if there's only a couple people, let's kind of like go to an angle where it shows a couple people enjoying it and then just the drivers, or they're meeting more towards the evening and there's golden light coming through, or you're at Sebring, you can see the cars go around the backside of the venue while they're talking. Um, those kind of directions. Other than that, it was more of just the sheer volume, and then it was okay, you guys for this session, you're going to be on the pits. Okay, this session, you guys are going to be doing track. But again, it was on you of like, okay, here's the light, here's what corners I need to be at. Because, morning, turn 4, 5, 6 are really good. You got to prioritize that and then know, okay, from the trailer, it's going to take me, for me, I like to really categorize 5 minutes to this corner, shoot there, get all the cars going by. I have an hour and a half for this practice session. How can I most, how efficient can I be with this session to knock out these three corners within this section of time? And then practice two, okay, it's a little bit later in the day, so I'm going to shift to these other corners and do the same thing. So you don't want to be doing the same cars at the same corners each day. I always want to do something different.
But
So,
it's nice you still get left with a bit of like creative freedom though. Because that like
yeah,
to me, I
yeah,
always kind of thought just like, oh, we need a side angle shot, we need a shot coming out of the international horseshoe, we need, I'm like,
it was pretty much up
it's
to
nice
you.
to have that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it just came to at one point, um, especially during Pilot Challenge, we had so many cars to cover. But then, like Laguna Seca weekend, we were covering every single group on track, the Lamborghinis, Pilot Challenge, and then WeatherTech. So we had no breaks. We couldn't get meals. We were just go, 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 go. And then it took forever to get around because we didn't have scooters.
ooh.
Which, by the way, having some kind of motorized transportation is basically, the best way to get around, especially when you're having to shoot for an agency or an organization or a sponsor. Walking these racetracks is not fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
it is not like
Because I did that for the TPF with the Rolex 24 this year. I don't ever want to do that again. I may
no,
only
and if you
be 31, but when I'm doing all that gear, I actually missed opportunities because I
no,
couldn't get around quick enough.
you do, and people don't realize if you've never been to one of these racetracks, they are huge places. They are massive. Like I remember putting something, I think I put out like my Instagram story last year. I'm like, what people think motorsports photographers do. And it's just like, oh, shooting this, shooting this. And I'm like, and I just put a video of me just like walking, pointing the camera to the ground. Because that's if you don't have like a golf cart or something, that's what most of your time doing when you're out shooting is just
Yeah.
walking from place to place.
For instance, a really big track, Road America, because it's tight, but it's not, is 640 acres. That is huge.
Hmm.
So you cannot walk that. If you were to leave from the media center, it would take an hour and a half to walk that. Thankfully, some tracks allow you to drive a car, but honestly, the best mode of transport is a motorized scooter and, backpack, all that kind of stuff. Having that agency gave me that access because they had scooters available. But it's even though we were shooting lots of volume, we got efficient enough shooting and then having the scooters, we could go to the media center, do a quick car dump, 5 or 10 minutes to eat lunch, and then literally be right back out because, oh, here comes another practice session. Or after each, I think it was with two of the teams, we had to deliver images after every single session. They're on track within 50 minutes. Yeah,
That's
that
brutal.
that was the guarantee that we had to work with them. At the same time, though, that meant they could stay on top, posting real time updates of what they were able to do on track, whether it was good or bad. But it put more of our images in front of the public, which was kind of cool. But that definitely added to the stress of you're skipping meals and dumping from that past session 3,000 images, and you need to pull three. And then we would pull three from each photographer and then send them off.
Yeah, man, time that's something that I keep saying that's something that every time I again, but time management is like so important.
Yep.
And like whether you're working for an agency or when I'm doing grassroots level stuff like that motorcycle series I'm part of, or even it's like stuff I shoot like SCCA and stuff, top of mind. People are like fresh off the weekend. That's when people are thinking about it. That's when like if I don't get these done by like Monday evening, people forget about it by Wednesday.
Yeah.
And
Well, they've
even,
moved on to the next event, especially if they're doing week by week.
yeah, and I have 140 different riders or drivers, and I gotta, edit them and sort them all by like Monday evening because then people forget about it.
Yep.
And learning that and learning a good workflow from that is one of the probably most important skills I've learned like throughout my journey as a photographer is just learning time management.
Hmm.
And that's something you never think of until you need to think of it.
Yep. And as weird as it sounds, when you're trying to hone in those extra seconds, the time it takes to clear a memory card makes all the difference for me. And that's kind of going back to okay, it's time to upgrade because when it takes 45 minutes to clear a single memory card, oh, I have three of those. You're like, time to move up. So that's where there is a need, you know, that okay, I need to step up to become more efficient because I have to become this quick. So that's when the equipment kind of is the fulfills that need. So now going from SD card to CF Express, I can't quantify how much more efficient I am when I can clear a full 128 gigabyte card in less than 5 minutes. Nearly a gigabyte a second is mind boggling versus a 64 gig SD was taking 45 minutes in the past. Working with the D500, that was my workhorse for years. So now I could dump cards between sessions, which means it's less editing I'm doing at the end of the day. But now I'm working with bigger files because my cameras are higher megapixels.
And it just takes
Okay,
more times,
now I have to upgrade the laptop because the poor laptop is screaming at me. So now I need something that can, is full SSD and fast and snappy. I've gone through three laptops in, let me see here, probably in the last 6 years. Generally do a laptop every 2 years just
oh
because
my
of tech.
goodness.
Between every 2 to 3 years, a laptop. Now, the one I have now, I think is going to stick around because it is just that amazing. I won't go in details, but SSD is life.
No, 100%. And like I would almost consider that my, if I had to take the most valuable tool that, that is worth the money putting into, I'd say is my laptop.
Yeah.
Like
Aside from the
I
photography part,
I mean,
those two
even
have
then,
to be.
like I would rather have, like the crappy contemporary version of like the sport 600 millimeter lens I
Yeah.
have, and take that loss and have a laptop I can do the work on in an efficient manner. Cause
Sure.
like I was running this, like, I started last year running on this $500 Asus laptop, and
Hmm.
dude, this thing was melting in my hands. I was like, I swear.
Yep.
And
Just
I'm like,
cooking.
yeah, and I just got this workers' comp check, which because I cut off part of my finger at my old job. I got this
Ouch.
workers' comp check. I'm like, all right, I just bought a 1DX. I was like, I'm gonna save the rest of this. I'm like, nope, I'm gonna get myself a MacBook Pro and
Yep.
never have to worry about
Yeah. You
workflow again, like losing
gotta be
time.
efficient taking the pictures. Now you gotta be efficient editing and your output, because if you take 2 weeks to put out from an event, like you said, it becomes an afterthought, and then you start overlapping if you're doing successive events. And especially when I was first starting out with photography, during college, I had to manage on how much I was shooting and editing and then trying to do it between classes. And then with
You-
IMSA, it was, there in July, I had Long Beach in LA. Then the week after that was, why am I blanking? What's the other? Oh my gosh, why am I forgetting?
No, I can't think of it either.
It's the northern one. It's not Laguna. Why am I?
What is
It was
after
it
Long
was an
Beach?
it was an SRO event. Why am I
Oh,
blanking?
okay.
Give me a second. I hate brain farts.
Is it Portland?
Nope. No, it was I spent a whole month in California. Why am I blanking? Because it was in wine country,
Sonoma.
Sonoma. Yes. I actually got a couple bottles of wine from that. I actually managed to find them here in Ohio. But I spent a couple days between the events to enjoy wine country for the first time on my own. Kind of made it a whole, like, I'm here, may as well enjoy myself and recuperate between events. But it was Long Beach, Sonoma, and then Laguna Seca. Um, but between Sonoma and Laguna Seca, I spent 10 days out in Central California exploring Yosemite National Park.
Wow, that's cool.
So, doing this racing photography, I was able to travel and go explore places, kind of to major long distance trips on my own and do other forms of photography, landscapes, wildlife, all kinds of stuff. Um, and do some really cool exploring, especially out in California, which is a gorgeous area.
Going back to Sonoma, I think you saw my Instagram story the other day. Did you know that I learned this the other day that about 10 or 15 minutes from Sonoma Raceway is where the real life picture of the Windows XP background, like the
Yeah,
default background, Bliss was taken.
and I can totally see that because Sonoma kind of has that vibe to it, these very domed, rolling hills and things.
Yeah, and it's just like I text that to Justin Potter, the Stuart Haas photographer, because he always goes on like his landscapes on his journeys in NASCAR, and he's like, "Are you serious? I pass that every single time we go to Sonoma, and I never would have known." I'm like, "Yeah, because it's so unceremoniously there on just the side of a highway." There's a
Yep,
really good documentary on YouTube about the backstory to that picture. It's
interesting.
fascinating.
But it was funny. I don't know if it was you or someone that posted a picture of like, why are we not at Sonoma during springtime?
That was yeah, that
Because
was me.
it just this blanket of green. And when I was there last time for the SRO races, it had actually had rained before we got there. It was misting and raining and then really raining quite a few times when we were there. That's one of the reasons why the D500's in pieces. Um, is all that moisture and rain greened up the grass for us, but nowhere near that
Ah,
green.
yeah.
So they're like, man, you should have been here last year. It was a total dust bowl and everything was dead and brown and crusty. So I lucked out on the one time I go to Sonoma where there was some color in the hills and you could it had a bit more character than just everything being brown and gray, you know?
Dude, it's a shame we do not race there in the spring. I don't think anybody it is a crime against racing humanity that we do not race in Sonoma when the grass is green there, because that
Yeah.
place is just absolutely gorgeous.
Hmm.
But all right, we've been going at it for a bit. It was awesome, dude. Great conversation. Probably should wrap it up.
Okay.
I sleep like a grandpa. I go to bed at like 9:30. But so where can we find you to see all your stuff?
S- I post most of my stuff on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram more for the general public, or those that just kind of want to follow on my adventures. But it's Downforce Media, or my first and last name. So DWN Force.media is the Instagram tag. Got some crazy stuff coming up this year from bicycle racing coast to coast, maybe working with Fujifilm Digital on using medium format stuff. All the grassroots racing, trying to get some NASCAR, some IndyCar, bunch of stuff, but most of it will be posted on Instagram. Trying to get into video, so maybe there'll be some stuff posted on YouTube down the line.
Awesome, man. So all that information for everybody listening will be in the description. Wherever you're listening to this, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. Yeah, I love listening to podcasts on Instagram. Yeah, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that information will be in the description. Jeremy, thank you so much for taking the time out of the day and just shoot the crap for a bit, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Had fun chatting.
Yes, it's a good time. Jeremy Bryner on the Sam Dre Show.